Hello to all of you. I really wish I could be with you in person because I think this is a very important conference about a very important issue. But I shall be in Panama while you're at the conference. I'll be giving a talk on the conservation and also growing our youth program, Roots and Shoots, that's now active in 140 countries around the world. Hunting, without any question, has been part of human history since the very beginning. I want to talk about two aspects. Firstly, how the impact of hunting on many populations of wild animals today has become unsustainable as commercial hunting has taken the place of subsistence hunting. Secondly, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the ethical implications of so-called sports hunting. The late Louis Leakey, the famous paleontologist, sent me to study chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, in the Gombe National Park in Tanzania. As I'm sure all of you know, they're our closest living relatives. The DNA of chimps and humans differs by only just over 1%, and much of their behavior is uncannily similar to ours, like postures and gestures of greeting such as kissing, embracing, holding hands, patting one another for reassurance, and also the long-term supportive bonds that can endure between family members and sometimes other members of the community throughout a lifetime of anything up to 60 years in the wild. We've recorded many examples of compassion and altruistic behavior among the chimpanzees we've studied. Sadly, like us, they also have a dark side, and they're capable of violence, brutality, and even a kind of primitive war when males of neighboring communities attack each other savagely, gang attacks that can often lead to death. Sometimes the chimpanzees across their range hunt. At Gombe, the favored prey is young monkeys, and the baboons that we've also studied at Gombe also hunt. They hunt very small creatures like bushbucks. The diet of the chimpanzees, of course, is mostly vegetarian, and eating meat is just about 2% of their diet, so it's not very significant. As I'm quite sure all of you know, Louis Leakey spent his life searching for the fossilized remains of early man in Africa. So when I was working for him before he sent me off to study the chimpanzees, he often talked about the evolution of hunting, and he talked about the use of bola stones linked by thongs that the hunter threw to entangle in the legs of an antelope so he could catch it, and of course the spears and arrows used by our stone-aged ancestors. And for countless years, humans practiced this kind of sustainable hunting. They were living in harmony with the environment around them and causing probably not much more difference to the prey animals than the carnivores, the lions and cheetahs and leopards with whom they shared that environment. And this kind of sustainable hunting is still practiced by some people around the world. In fact, it's many of the indigenous people who practice this sustainable hunting. But in many cases, we've seen a huge increase in the commercial hunting of wild animals in the last 30 years or so. Some of this hunting is for the live animal trade, and when this involves primates, it means usually killing the mother and stealing her infant for sale as a pet or for shipping overseas to zoos, use in entertainment or medical research. Some of the hunting that is causing so much damage today is for animal parts and tusks, ivory horn, skins of leopards and particularly tigers, body parts of various animals, sometimes used for or thought to be useful for medicinal purposes. And as I'm sure all of you know, ivory and rhino horn is so valuable today. It's more valuable than gold. And so this is driving poaching, and poaching, the poaching of elephants and rhinos and tigers is driving these magnificent animals to the point of extinction. It's a battle that we have to join, otherwise our grandchildren will know these animals only from zoos or picture books. Finally, there's the bushmeat trade, and it's this which is having such a major impact on chimpanzees, other apes, primates in Africa and elsewhere. The bushmeat trade is the commercial hunting of wild animals for food, and this is very different from that subsistence hunting that has been practiced through the ages. It's particularly devastating in the Congo Basin, which is where the largest populations of chimpanzees and other primates are still living. And when mothers are killed for food, and in the old days, no hunter worth his salt would kill a mother with a baby, because that's like the goose that lays the golden egg. But when it's for commercial reasons, when you're selling the carcass for meat, it's different. There's not much meat on an infant chimpanzee or other primate, and these pathetic little creatures are very often sold in the markets or even given to village children as pets. And in any case, their fate is pretty grim, unless, as is sometimes the case, we can persuade government officials to confiscate them. Not too difficult, because killing endangered species like chimpanzees is illegal. Then we look after them in sanctuaries. Various NGOs have created sanctuaries across Africa, and we, the Jane Goodall Institute, JGI, has the biggest sanctuary in Africa in the Republic of Congo, with almost 170 chimpanzees, many of them full grown, almost all of them victims of the bushmeat trade. We also have a program rescuing orphaned mandrills and other kinds of monkeys and gradually releasing them back into the wild. There would be no point in spending all this money caring for orphans of the bushmeat trade, if we weren't trying to do something about the trade itself. And so JGI, along with other NGOs, is creating educational materials, because a lot of times the hunters have no idea what animal is endangered, or even what an endangered species actually means, and they don't know it's illegal to kill them. So we've created posters and educational materials for people living in the villages and in the schools in chimpanzee habitat, again in the Congo Basin. We also work with people to improve their lifestyles and to provide alternative kinds of food, so that they no longer need to rely on shooting animals to make a living or for their food. One imaginative program created by our people in the Republic of Congo has created a series of extremely popular TV shows where a little local village boy, aged 8, at least 8 at the start of the series, he is passionate about the environment, he loves animals, and he's given magic powers so that he can go and confront hunters to save various kinds of animals, particularly chimps, and people love it. So we're trying to raise money to do more of this, because it's all raising awareness among these people who otherwise have no way of understanding what's going on. A similar kind of film, a little bit more realistic, has been made also with local actors in Uganda, and in the same way, this too is a very popular show and translated into the local languages. I said I wanted to say a little bit about another kind of hunting, and that's trophy hunting. It wasn't long ago that the killing of Cecil the lion by a Minnesota dentist sparked international outrage, and he was forced to go into hiding. Unfortunately, he's just one of the many hundreds of hunters over the past years who've gone out hunting lions, elephants, rhinos, all kinds of amazing animals, just for the sake of getting a trophy, a head to stick on their walls, a skin to drape over the sofa, or even as a carpet to put on the floor for people to trample over. There's a lot of controversy about this so-called sports hunting, and one argument says, well, the money that is paid for the license to go and shoot one of these animals will enable the government, usually strapped for cash, to put more effort into conservation. Unfortunately, this usually isn't the case, and anyway, the biggest profit is made by the outfitter. Then there's the argument that this kind of hunting is dealing with such a small number of animals in the overall picture that it doesn't really make any difference at all. As animals become increasingly endangered, this is increasingly untrue. And then there's this too. The hunter is going for the lion with the biggest, most beautiful mane, the elephant with the biggest tusks, the rhino with the longest horn, the antelopes with the biggest, most spectacular horns, deer with antlers, and so forth. And so they are killing those animals which through natural selection have evolved to become the most important sires, so that when you remove these animals, you are affecting the genetic health of the species in the future. In fact, after Cecil was killed, a rival lion came in and killed his cubs, and this is something which will always happen if the hunted lion has cubs. That's just what lions do. And, you know, quite apart from that, Cecil's hunter said, well, I wouldn't have taken, that's what they say, I wouldn't have taken that lion if I'd known he had a name, if I'd known people loved him. But just because Cecil had a name, that doesn't make him any different from any of the other hundreds of lions that have been shot. The same when a known rhino was killed. That sparked outrage, but he was no different just because he was known. And so those arguments really don't hold water. So there's one other thing that I want to mention briefly, and that's concerning the emotional life of these animals who are hunted. Whether they're hunted for bushmeat, for their parts, for their body parts, or for trophies, it comes to the same thing. Until quite recently, science and many religions taught that the difference between us and other animals was one of kind. In other words, there was a sharp line dividing us from the rest of the animal kingdom. Today, I think most people realize that the difference is one of degree. The observation and film of the Gombe chimpanzees and subsequently data from other study sites showed very clearly that they, like us, have vivid personalities, have minds capable of solving problems, have their own primitive cultures, and show emotions similar to or even the same as those we call happiness, sadness, anger, depression, grief, and so on. And certainly they feel pain. Information from field studies of other primates and also of elephants, lions, dolphins, and so on have provided similar information. And so science has been forced to rethink our relationship with other animals. We are part of and not separated from the rest of the animal kingdom. Of course, I learned that from my childhood teacher, my dog Rusty. You can't share your life in a meaningful way with a dog, cat, cow, horse, parrot, or whatever, and not know that this is true. There's even recently a flurry of interest in the intellectual, extraordinary behavior of the octopus. It's true that the killing of one individual chimpanzee, gorilla, monkey, elephant, and so on is likely to affect the social dynamics of his or her group, because social bonds will be broken, the dominance structure may be artificially disrupted, and fights which may cause injury or even fatalities may break out among the other males. And infants will be orphaned. It's just shocking to think what the killing of one animal, even one animal, in a group of chimpanzees, the harm it can inflict. There is one story that gives some idea of the bonds that can exist in chimpanzee communities. When two hunters in southern Tanzania, two poachers, killed a female, they were stuffing her infant into a sack when a male chimpanzee, risking his life, ran out of the forest, grabbed the rifle, threw it to the ground, attacked both men, scalping one more or less, and seizing the infant and running back with him into the forest. We found this out because both men ended up in hospital. I just hope that that infant was old enough to survive without his mother's milk. There are many stories like this, and I think it's sharing some of these stories, particularly among children around the world, that can start to make a difference. So that our youth program in the East, in China particularly, and other Asian countries, stories of what suffering is inflicted on elephants just to procure their ivory, the horrors perpetrated on rhinos, the suffering of the tigers. Once children understand this, then they start talking to their parents. And so gradually, along with other NGOs and some actors who've made film showing some of these horrors that we perpetrate, this gradually is making a difference. And hopefully we can make a difference in time before some of these iconic animals disappear forever. So thank you, and I will end up, since I'm very far away, with the distance call of the chimpanzee from me to you. Bye.